So for the next 30 to 40 minutes or 45 minutes, inshallah, I want to make the point that we have been discussing the transition now from the Prophet especially, and the rest of the Imams, their transition from this spiritual realm and their psychological strength which they received from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that grace, including the human effort they put in, that how do we translate this or understand this, that they attain these spiritual stations in the soul, but were also able to live in the society, to guide communities, to, as I gave the example, pray salah, amend the salah, look at the audience behind, teach the Qur'an. Or in the case of al-Husayn ibn Ali alayhi salam, how was he able to maintain that presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, knowing full well that he was going to be martyred? This is what the historical reports indicate, that he knew that as soon as refusing to give allegiance would put himself and arguably his family in danger. So, all of these dimensions that we have, how is it now that when we talk about spirituality and infallibility, how do we make that transition now to this worldly realm, and how the Imam carries that divine breath and then applies it in the rest of the society? This is the fundamental question for me, and that's why I said, what I am saying is small, extremely small. These last 2 days have taught me, especially, that when it comes to the crunch, words are meaningless. Actions are what count. Sabr, tawakkul, adala, justice, generosity. These are the things that we look for in each other, and that is what we will remember by. I mean, you will listen to me and you will forget about me. That's not important. What is going to remain with us is how we touch each other's hearts. Isn't that true? You remember someone by the genuine smile they gave you. You remember someone who touched your heart. You remember someone who helped you. That's how you remember people. That's it. That's why today we remember al-Husayn ibn Ali alayhi salam. We don't remember what he said all the way in Karbala. Nobody, I'm giving you these things for further information. We remember his stand. We remember Rasulullah because of how he touched the society, right? Now, what I want to find to, inshallah, answer this is a link for us to maybe somehow we can remember the Prophet and Ahlul Bayt, of how they are touching our lives. And more importantly, I would say, how we can understand how they made that transition from the spiritual to the worldly realm, inshallah. Salawat. I'll begin with a statement, in fact, from al-Husayn ibn Ali. It is in his letter in response to the letters of the Kufans. It is reported in Tariq al-Tabari and Kitab al-Irshad. Okay? I'm not only reading the last few lines, and you will see from the previous lectures when I was quoting al-Husayn ibn Ali alayhi salam, and how he was calling out to Allah, or how we narrated yesterday al-Husayn and Ali al-Akbar talking about death and righteousness, this very deep metaphysical conversation. You will see now how al-Husayn, how he writes to the Kufans and puts this into practice. He says, فَلِعُمْرِ مَا الْإِمَامُ إِلَّا الْعَامِلُ بِالْكِتَابِ وَالْآخِذُ بِالْقِسْطِ وَدَائِنْ بِالْحَقِّ وَالْحَابِسْ نَفْسِهِ عَلَى ذَاتِ اللَّهِ وَالسَّلَامِ. That's how he ends. He says, by my life, he says, an imam is nothing. Look at his words. An imam is nothing. Illa, except, istithna. Illa amil bil kitab. An imam, a leader, is nothing unless he acts by the kitab, by the book. That is the Qur'an. How do we measure imams? How do we measure scholars, righteous people, the gurus on YouTube? How do we measure them? Here we have a criterion. An imam is nothing except if he acts by the book. So the Qur'an is something he should know. And second, that he is a restorer of qist. Qist means fairness or justice. So after the Qur'an is what? Justice. I at least hope to deal with these two today and tomorrow, inshallah, if there's time. At least these two. Okay? So, he must restore fairness or justice. And not only that, he is a devotee to the truth, to the haqq. Something is true, you should say it. And something is not true, you should also say it. Look at al-Husayn ibn al-Islam. The bay'ah, not to give bay'ah, he spoke the truth. Yazid was an unjust person. Okay? And if something is batil, you also pointed out that this is wrong. And it's very difficult to do this. I have found this in our Shia community, Sunni community, wider society. I'm having visited a number of communities doing interfaith programs, working within the realm of law or university. What we all face is one simple thing. Are we known as just human beings and truthful human beings, or are we known as liars? And if you agree with me, the people we trust in our lives are the people that tell the truth to us. Would you accept that? I mean, I'm just giving an example of myself. Right at the top, right, and mashallah, I built more relations with all of you, but right at the top, you'll have very few people who you trust. Would you accept that? Very few. You can maybe count them on your fingers. I mean, you'll have your immediate family, yes, and there may be issues in family. We have to be honest here. Look at Abu Lahab and the Prophet, uncle and nephew. Look at that relationship. But you can count them on your fingers. And outside of your family, perhaps few friends and close relationships. Then after that, and again, maybe you'll agree, you'll find people who will be nice to you on certain occasions. But in other occasions, when you need them, either they won't be there, or you'll find that actually they either had something against you, they were suspicious about you, maybe something else will come out through relationships. And Ali ibn Abi Talib had a very hard time with this. With Talha and Zubair as an example, who were once with him, and then the Battle of Siffin, and especially when he was Khalif, people started leaving him. Even the Muhajir and the Ansar, who once supported Ali ibn Abi Talib, when he became fourth Khalif, they disputed his policies. These are the very people that helped Rasulullah. They started to go against Ali ibn Abi Talib at the time that he was Khalif. Okay? So even at the middle level, our natural dictates tell us that not everybody tells the truth. Why should you respect an Imam? Because he is someone that has understood that Allah is haqq. He is the truth. He is the reality. And now has translated this in his actions. Allah is adil. And so what is the Imam? He is the akhid bil qist. He is the one that restores that fairness and justice. Look at the immediate connection I'm trying to explain. They have imbibed the attributes of Allah and are implementing it in their lives. And not only that, they have devoted their self for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Their whole life is for Allah. That is why I've said early on that al-Husayn ibn Ali alayhi salam and his family, all of them, understood this notion of sacrifice. When it comes down to it, when justice is required, truth is required, when our duty calls, we drop every single thing. And that's why in these last couple of nights, when I am reading the Maktul or various reports, I am still trying to understand how children, teenagers and young men understand the notion of death and are willing to hurl themselves in the face of death to defend Islam and for morality. This is something we pray for. That is why all of the Shuhada of Karbala, regardless of the age and background, we elevate. Even Khur, as I've said, Khur was an enemy of al-Husayn ibn al-Islam, but we elevate him. You know, how come, as I've said, look at this very simple example, we'll elevate the station of Khur, right? As a big enemy. Big enemy. Al-Husayn forgave him, right? Okay, so we elevate him as a shaheed. Now, somebody else in our community, or another person, or of another religion, how come sometimes we find it so difficult to say, well, somebody else can come to the right path, somebody from another religion? How come sometimes we find it difficult to forgive, or at least extend our hand for forgiveness. We will have this beautiful example of khur, but sometimes when there is community politics, sectarian strife, personalities in the community and society, we'll find it very, very difficult to either make the first move at the least, or if they are making the move, to forgive. And beyond that, as a matter of pluralism, to enable or think about how other people attain salvation. This is something maybe next time Allah wills we can research this more. This notion of paths to Islam, salvation in Islam. How do we understand it? I still feel these areas of Karbala are totally unexplored, totally. Khur, can I just give this example, right? Inshallah it will make you think. Was Khur a Muslim? I'm saying after Husayn a.s. forgives him, was he a Muslim? Is everybody sure? Sorry? Did he? Oh, okay, but okay, no problem. I'm asking you. I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I'm saying, did you read this, or is this your judgment? A judgment. All right. So if I were to tell you, I may not have it here. Some notes in the hospital, some notes in the hotel. No. If I were to tell you that read Kitab al-Irshad. Just read Kitab al-Irshad. If you can find it in English, please, on al-islam.org or on a PDF, read the section in which Khur ibn Yazid al-Riyahi comes and asks forgiveness from al-Husayn ibn al-Islam. Now, by memory, as I said, these are some lines that I remember, and I did narrate this to you, right? He comes begging to al-Husayn. He acknowledges his remorse. He says, I was the one that stopped you in your tracks. I was your enemy. O Husayn, I come repentant. O Husayn, can you forgive me? This is, I'm giving you maybe 2-3 lines from the 7-8 lines, right? Now, you can correct me, and maybe there are other reports I haven't read, and I stand to be corrected, okay? But from at least these few authentic reports we have, al-Husayn accepts that tawbah. There is no record of him saying La ilaha illallah. Maybe there is, no problem. Maybe there are other reports he's saying La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. No problem, I'm very happy to accept that. Even then, it doesn't stop what I'm trying to tell you, okay? My point is a very simple point. The people who chose the side of Karbala came from different backgrounds, okay? Whatever records we have, they may still have had their faith, they may still have had a notion of Allah, or they accepted Husayn as the Imam. Wahab, Hani and Qamar were Christians. Did they become Muslim? I don't know. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. Maybe they retained their Christianity, but they wanted to follow al-Husayn ibn al-Islam as a just man, okay? Khur, from the words that I have read, I mean, I don't know, I mean, did he said the Shahada, or he started praying, or in his heart he accepted Allah. Okay, no problem, inshallah, no problem. I'm playing devil's advocate for a purpose. I'm also accepting your conclusion. Either way, it doesn't change, inshallah, the answer I will give. Two things. We do not know what is inside a person's heart. We don't know. It's as simple as that. We're all Muslim now. We don't know what will happen at the end of life. We don't know. Number two, we also do not know how people conceive of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We don't know that either, by the way. As I've given you the example before, I went to 2 Christian schools. MashaAllah, I had a Shia upbringing. But let's say that upbringing wasn't strong. I could have been a Christian. Okay? So my environment tells me how to understand Allah. Okay? You can't say that now means that person is away from Allah. You can't say that. That is the tools he has been given. I have been given the Qur'an and Ahlul Bayt to understand Allah. Somebody is given Buddhism. Somebody is given mysticism. Somebody is given Christianity. Somebody is given nothing. I remember in my philosophy class, I still remember this discussion, in my philosophy class in secondary school, me being a naive Muslim, thinking everybody believes, but still good, I asked my friend, I said, I believe in God. I said, what do you believe in? And he says, I'm not so sure, but I do believe in a force. That's what he said. I believe in a force. Okay? And there were a number of people asked in the class, I believe in a force, I believe in energy. Now, that person didn't grow up with any religious tools. I mean, his parents, okay, they were Christian before, not really going to church, a secular household. What is his interaction? Science. His interaction is science. He has some notion of God, some notion of Isa alayhi salam. Okay? You have many walks of life, and the environment shapes their belief. Hul was his nurturing was what by the propaganda of Yazid. His nurturing of how he behaved against Hussein was by who? By Yazid. And by the propaganda at the time, the Umayyads. So now, at the last minute that he's coming to al-Husayn ibn al-Islam, he clearly has some notion of heaven and hell. He has a notion of justice. And if I agree with your judgment, he has a notion of God. No problem. But look at this. Exactly what notion does he have? The notion you and I have today of God? Does he have the notion that this Hussein is the Imam? In the sense of Ithna Ashari? In the sense of an infallible Imam? Does he have to believe he's an infallible Imam? No? So now that means Isma is not important. That's a trick. Just answered it. Okay. So, I'm saying to you that if he looks at Hussein alayhi salam, now he's not coming with this notion that maybe we come with, that Imam Hussein has to be perfect in every single action. He doesn't have anything like that. He's coming to al-Husayn alayhi salam and he believes this man is right. And he says, forgive me. Right? Look at this. I'm trying to unpack the maqtal for all of you. And we can do more dimensions here. So you can see here that what is inside a person's heart cannot always be measured by words. Number two, can't always be measured by formal belief. Somebody that believes in force or energy might have some divine pull but can't crystallize it. I've met a number of people like that. Number three, and the Prophet, our beloved Prophet Muhammad s.a.w. You will find this hadith in Majm al-Bayan Allama Tabrisi, by Allama Tabrisi, and this is in the tafsir of Surat al-Fatiha, so I'm giving you the reference. Somebody comes up to Rasulullah and he says, Ya Rasulullah, can you explain to me what faith is? I want a definition. He's like us, he wants things in a box, right? He says, can you please give me the definition of faith, right? Or he says, give me the definition of Islam and faith. And so Rasulullah says, if I remember correctly, he just takes his finger, I believe, takes his finger, and he points to his chest. When he's asked about Iman specifically, he just takes his finger and he points to his chest. He doesn't say anything. He does by ishara, by the way. The actual, he says ashara. Ashara ilay, or ishara ila sadri. Ishara to his chest, for example. So he indicated to his chest. That's all he did. And we have many other narrations which talk about the difference between Islam. I remember from Al-Baqir al-Islam, a hadith which is in Tukhaf al-Uqul and in Al-Kafi and a number of other sources, where he says that Islam is basically a declarative, it is formal, right? So it's something that you say, and it's something that you identify a person with in terms of their laws that they observe, like the laws of nikah, okay? But he says faith is of qalb. He says iman is to do with the heart, okay? So I'm sharing this with you because even in these areas you find two very important things in Karbala. One, you find that al-Husayn ibn Ali alayhi salam clearly has a notion of the love of Allah for His creation, which he is manifesting to the rest of the companions or even his enemies. Allah is Wadud, and al-Husayn is a manifestation or an example of the love of Allah to His creation. How can we disagree when we look at the maqtal and the shuhada? Number two, not only that, he has been able to translate that breath into action, which, as I said, sometimes we find difficult to do when it comes to dealing with each other. And then number three, even I would say the harder attributes like adala. Allah is adil. Now, are we just? I mean, I can say that Allah is just. I know that Allah will deal with me fairly and deal with us fairly on the Day of Judgment, inshallah, definitely. But his mercy, in fact, overrides his justice. If al-Husayn wanted to be just with Khur, he would have punished him. And he would have been right to do so, by the way. He would have been absolutely right to do so, and maybe we would be narrating a different story of Khur. And we would still be saying, look how just al-Husayn is. See how history can shape us. But instead, we want to listen to al-Husayn in the Maqtal because we want to feel the love of al-Husayn ibn al-Islam. And it is this love from the Qur'an as well and from Allah which guides us in our understanding of Islam. Salawat. I want to at least share with you an example, and we can continue tomorrow because I think I have to give a lecture, shorter lecture, but at least 2 lectures. One on the day of Ashura and then on Sham-e-Ghariba. So at least there'll be 2 reasonable lectures left, inshallah. What I want to humbly share with you is a sermon of Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam in Nahj al-Balagha, which is sermon 176, which talks specifically about the Qur'an and its ability to open up these spiritual dimensions to us, which the prophets and which the Prophet and Imams experienced, and 2, as a practical teaching, because I want to focus a bit on practice as well, today and tomorrow, how we can use these practical tools in our lives. As I've said, it's lovely to have these theological debates and philosophical debates, but, and I'm saying this on a very personal level, we want to know the practical teachings of al-Husayn ibn al-Islam, or the Prophet and Ahlul Bayt. We want to apply it in our lives. We want a reform in Muharram. Otherwise, what's the point of the 10 days, right? It comes and goes. How many majalis have we attended, okay? So, this sermon, inshallah, you can read it in Nahj al-Balagha, you can follow it on your phone. This sermon 176. According to Ibn Abi al-Hadid, he's one of the famous commentators of Nahj al-Balagha. He has a sharh or a commentary of Nahj al-Balagha, several volumes, very beautiful commentary. Okay, he says that sermon 176 is the greatest sermon, the greatest sermon ever on the Qur'an. The greatest. Okay? Why does he say this? Why does he say this? Or amongst the greatest or the greatest? Why does he give it this level, right? I'll just read to you a few of the opening lines, and inshallah you can understand why. Okay? Imam Ali has said, he says, salawat please. Yes. He says, وَعَلَمُوا أَنَّ هَذَا الْقُرْآنِ. Okay? Know that this Qur'an, هُوَ النَّاسِحُ الَّذِي لَا يَغُشُّ. Know that this Qur'an, it is a nasih, it is an advisor, that does not deceive. Okay? The Qur'an is an advisor, but it doesn't deceive you. It can't deceive you. I can give you something and maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm deceiving you. Okay? You don't know my niyyah, 100%, right? So the Qur'an, however, you can be confident that it's not going to deceive you. وَالْهَادِي الَّذِي لَا يُضِلُّ. It's a guide that doesn't mislead either. Because the Qur'an is an authentic book. It does not mislead you. Okay? وَالْمُحَدِّثُ الَّذِي لَا يَكْذِبُ. It's a muhaddith, it's a narrator. It's a narrator that has not given you anything false either. So it narrates things accurately. Now I've been open and honest that the compilation of the Qur'an is different. The chapters of the Qur'an is different. But the verses itself inside and the words, we can say is authentic. There are different recitation styles. I'm being honest with you. And there are debates about this. There are debates even about letters of the Qur'an, which in my notes in the tafsir, I have it with you. And I've given you this example before. Surat with a sad or with a sin. Okay? And there are other examples about fatha, dhamma and kasra. But the words themselves and what the Prophet communicated to the society in both the Shia and Sunni sect is regarded as authentic. Okay, so I'm being honest with all of you. So this is what I believe it refers to, that what was communicated by Rasulullah has remained. Okay? And here comes the very key line. وَمَا جَالَسَ هَذَا الْقُرْآنَ أَحَدٌ إِلَّا قَامَ عَنْهُ بِزِيَادَةٍ أَوْ نُقْصَانٍ. He says, nobody should sit by this Qur'an, except that when he stands, there should be an increase or there should be a decrease or reduction. Have you ever felt like that with the Qur'an? So you're reading the Qur'an, Imam Ali says, look, if this Qur'an has this level of guiding, right, as soon as you stand up after reading it and get on with your affairs, you have to have an increase in something or you have to have a decrease in something. That's the test, by the way. That's the test of if we have read the Qur'an correctly or if it has an impact on us. Okay? There is an answer to this, by the way, of what should increase and decrease. I'll give it to you, inshallah. But just to give a kind of rhetorical question, how many times have we felt there has been an increase or decrease in our lives and we have opened the Qur'an? Even tomorrow, look, it's day of Ashura, right? By grace of Allah, we will do the Amal together. And we will recite the surahs of the Qur'an, like Surah Al-Ahzab as an example, right? Okay? Now, yes, inshallah, I will be reciting. Better for you to follow and understand the meaning. You are reciting. It's a mustahab salah. Okay? It's mustahab. Better that you feel this increase or the decrease coming out of you. I'll explain what it is. Okay, I'm reciting, you can be following, but there's no need at all that you are saying every letter. It's a second surah, I'm reciting, no problem, you are hearing, and you are doing your best to follow. So you can look at the meaning, and you can understand what should be happening to your and my heart. And what is the answer, Imam Ali says? He says, زِيَادَةٍ فِي الْغُدَى أَوْ نُقْصَانٍ مِّنْ عَمَلٍ. He says, an increase in guidance. Right? So the Qur'an, we should feel that there's been an increase in guidance. Or a nuqsan, something that is kind of removed. A reduction, you can say, in blindness. That is spiritual blindness, by the way. Spiritual blindness, not actual blindness. Spiritual blindness. And I've given an example of this. Pride, jealousy, stubbornness, right? Not wanting to forgive any of these things. All of these things are things that we look inside. So again, the amal of Ashura is the things that we can be looking for. Now, Imam Ali doesn't leave it there, by the way. Imam Ali is a very specific person. He gives you, or he gives us, I should say, 4 illnesses or spiritual illnesses that I would say that all of us suffer from. All of us suffer from this, right? And I'll read just the 4 out before doing the maqtal, okay? He says, وَهُوَ الْكُفْرُ وَالنِّفَاقُ وَالْغَيُّ وَالدَّلَالُ. 4. So these are the 4 major illnesses that he believes plagues human beings. He says kufr, disbelief. We all, now remember this sermon is given to Muslims, right? Of course anybody that's there, but predominantly Muslims. You would ask, why is he talking about kufr here? Because you would say, are these people disbelievers? Well, possibly, we don't know what's in their hearts. There were hypocrites in the Prophet's time. But remember, kufr also has meanings of ungratefulness to Allah. Okay? That we can be ungrateful. And as a reference for all of you, if you want, and this is translated on alislam.org, if you read the tafsir of Surah Al-Fatiha by Allama Tabatabai, and you read his tafsir of that surah, I forget which verse it is. It is possibly Ihdina Surat al-Mustaqim, possibly. Or no, Iyaka na'budu wa Iyaka nasta'in. I think that in that verse, he gives you several definitions of what kufr is. Several. And one of the meanings is ungratefulness. And we all can be ungrateful. Which is why I wanted to take the time out to thank all of you in the community. So, kufr, okay? Number 2, nifaq. Nifaq is what? Hypocrisy. Now all of us can be hypocritical, all of us. Doesn't matter who we are all the same. A scholar can be a hypocrite, A follower can be a hypocrite. Any person that can be a hypocrite, doesn't really matter, to be honest. And I've encountered both ends. Sorry to say that. I have encountered both. Okay? Some people don't like if I mention scholars. They say it's disrespect. Well, I can give you evidence. So I'm not going into that. Okay? What I'm saying to you, whether it's a Muslim scholar, Christian scholar, Jewish scholar, whether it's a professor at a university, right? So I'm being open. Whoever it is, doesn't matter the tag or label we have, we all can be hypocrites. So either I say something and do something else, or I'm professing something to Allah and doing something in my private life. Right? Okay? 3, he says, wal-ghayyu. Wal-ghayyu is kind of transgression, transgressing. Al-ghayyu, or kind of rebelliousness also you can say. Okay? We can transgress and rebel against the commandments of Allah, or the teachings of Qur'an and Ahlul Bayt themselves, or basic morality, to be honest. We can rebel. When we feel like doing a sin, we will sin. And last is dalal, which is misguidance. Okay? So that this misguidance means that when we read something or interpret something or act in a way, we are misguided. A simple example in Imam Ali's life, the Khawarij. The Khawarij, and if you read now Nahj al-Balagha, sermon 124 and 125, if you read both these sermons, and there are other sermons, in those sermons, Imam Ali is addressing the Khawarij. And why is he addressing the Khawarij? The Khawarij are criticizing him for engaging in tahkim. Tahkim is arbitration with Muawiyah. Why are you arbitrating with this hypocrite Muawiyah? Okay, they are right about that, no problem. But look where the misguidance occurs. They say to him, you should not act according to your free will or actions. You must follow the literal verses of Qur'an, where Allah says in Surah Al-An'am, if I'm not mistaken, the decision rests with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So they are saying, you should not go to Muawiyah. Khawarij are telling him. And Ibn Muljim was a Khawarij that assassinated Imam alayhi salam. A supposed Muslim kills a Muslim, or kills a righteous person, right? You know, when we sometimes say that Islam is attacked by the West and the media, we should look at our own history as well. I think we have to be honest. Muslims have killed each other and continue to kill each other. We have to give both sides of the story, always, right? So the Khawarij is an example of misguidance, that they interpret the Quran literally, and as a number of research papers say, they provide the theological basis to ISIS and ISIL today, and groups like that. They look to their theology and they say, well, this was a sect in Islam, they did this justifies our action, we're going to kill people. And we're going to do things to women, and we're going to kill other religions, or be harsh to other religions. Which is why I talked about Karbala in a more plural manner, because it has that dimension. So, to conclude, and before the Maqtal, the point I'm making is, and hopefully you can see this, is you have this spiritual prophet, or spiritual imam you can say. They are translating that spirituality in their interactions. I gave the example of Khur. But then 3, they are translating it into their teachings to us, and they are being open to us. They are giving us a way. They're giving us a road for the Qur'an to open up these spiritual dimensions in our everyday life. The Qur'an isn't some otherworldly scripture. It's for us to engage with in our daily life. And a last point, some people often say, do not discuss interpretation of Qur'an from the minbar. Do not discuss tafsir from the minbar. Do not discuss scholarly opinions from the minbar. So as a simple point I'm saying to you, I mean, look, it doesn't matter what sect you are, who you are in the audience. But predominantly I know you're Shia. Are we followers of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam? Yes? We would like, okay, whoever we would like to take advice from Imam Ali alayhi salam. He is our role model. We want to construct societies on the basis of his vision. Okay, so why is this sermon not done in some small seminar room in a masjid? Why is this said in public? Why is this a khutbah? Why is Imam Ali engaging in some very deep things to the public? See, the often argument is, don't say these things in public, because why? people can't understand them, right? You're going to confuse and mislead people. So then, was Imam Ali confusing people then? These things are very difficult to decipher, by the way. I mean, I've just given you a very small thing. If you read the sermon, you think, how is Imam Ali looking at the Qur'an? Totally different from the way we look at the Qur'an. He is engaging in some deep philosophy and concepts here. And he's openly telling people. He is not scared of because why? He has confidence in people's intellects. So, if we are to criticize people from the pulpit to say these things, so then we must criticize Imam Ali. Let's be consistent in our logic, totally consistent. We must criticize every sermon of Nahj Balagha that talks about these things. Inshallah, salawat. My dear brothers and sisters, this is the night of Ashura, the night in which people are aware of their impending destiny, but it is a destiny they have chosen by Allah. There are some that may leave al-Husayn ibn al-Islam, and there are others that stay with al-Husayn ibn Ali alayhi salam. But I want to discuss, and even though tomorrow we will discuss, but traditionally it is also done, that when I think of Karbala, as I've said before, this feeling I cannot read from my heart. I don't know how to shake that feeling, and those of you would know much better than me. The children of Karbala, I can't shake that feeling. It always comes to me. And there is one being that comes to me, and that is Ali al-Asghar. I can't shake that feeling. Ali al-Asghar, as is reported, was about 6 months old. 6 months old. His mother Rabab, also as reported, the mother of Sakina, salamullahi alayha. Okay. There are various reports of how Ali al-Asghar was killed or why Imam Hussein had Ali al-Asghar in his hand. That is not important, but I want to indicate the camp was thirsty. The camp was thirsty. The children were crying. The mothers would know better than me. Doctors would know better than me. The cries of a baby and the cries of a child. These are cries that shake the heart. You know, however strong we are, we collapse, we fall down. This crying of children was crying that was there in Karbala, especially that last day, those last few days, that crying, pangs of tears, pangs of thirst. Those tears is what led al-Husayn ibn Ali salam to at least go to the enemy and say, look, surely, you cannot be this hard-hearted. Surely you cannot. Surely you cannot. He says, for the sake of this child, let us stop this battle. For the sake of this child, have mercy. For the sake of this child, give us water. Give it water. And, you know, the reports, it's as if by the time he raises Ali al-Asghar, that arrow is struck into the neck of Ali al-Asghar. There is no time. There is no time. And he's holding Ali al-Asghar. And I've said this before, but the neck of a baby, how big is the neck of a baby? Barely palm of your hand. So an arrow that slices through. And some may question reports. Okay, no problem, question reports. But if a baby is killed, however is killed, how much do you think is split in the body of a baby? You know, when I have discussed as-salamu ala a'adha'il muqatta'at. That's what I said from the ziyarah. Peace be upon you, all the 7 limbs. Yes? Tell me, what limbs are there of a baby? What limbs are there of a baby that the enemy would strike the arrow, and that arrow would strike through, and that blood would cover the baby, or that blood would cover Husayn ibn Ali salam? And the al-Husayn ibn al-Islam is standing there. Can you imagine his feelings? The mothers of the audience, the fathers, you would be able to feel. And that is why in the ziyarah, we say, as-salamu ala radi' as-saghir. We say, peace be upon you, O that suckling infant. That baby that was at that stage of suckling. That baby was only a baby. So the enemies, when they shot the arrow, and as further reports say, they started to justify this action later on in history. They said that, what would you do if the enemy came to you? Was a baby an enemy? Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Rabbana la taj'alna ma'a qawmi dhalimin. Oh Allah, we ask you to please give us the strength to understand the message of al-Husayn ibn Ali alayhi salam, to implement it in our lives. Oh Allah, please forgive our sins. Please increase our knowledge. Oh Allah, please help us fight oppression. May you grant shafa on all those who are ill in the community. And when you elevate the stations of the marhumin of this very community, dear people dear families have lost in this community, inshallah. And may you hasten the appearance of the 12th Imam. Surat al-Fatiha.